Hi guys, it's Jessica, and right now I'm going to be coloring this lovely little lady over here. She's an avatar from Guideline. I'll show you what the avatar looks like. Isn't she cute? She's so adorable. I can't wait to color her. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the background. Can't forget that small tiny little thigh gap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert it. I'm going to click my folder and create a layer mask. And I like to double check and make sure that everything is all filled out. So what I do is I create another layer under that folder. And everything seems to be selected. Good. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start coloring in. I'm going to take the dropper and start coloring in the shapes. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the brushes that I'm using. The brushes that I'm using is from Brian Allen, and he made a brush pack. I believe it's, I can't point out what the exact price is, but it's affordable and it's over 200 brushes. And to be honest, I only use about 5 or 6 brushes out of the 200 brushes. And I'm not saying that it's redundant, the amount of brushes it has. I haven't really experimented all the brushes. It's 200 of them, but so far I've like 5 out of 200 of them. Just so you know, the skin color, I almost always have it in a layer by itself. Sometimes my flat coloring is all in one layer, but for skins, I put it separate because I sometimes like to change the color of the skin just to make it as accurate as possible. Because sometimes lighting does change the color. It can always make the skin appear lighter or darker. And skin is very reflective. It's reflective, it changes colors depending on how long have you stayed indoors or outdoors. By the way, there's no wrong or right way to color as long as the results come out right. And I also want to point out that when it comes to brushes, the brushes are not what makes the artist good. I know some artists have received requests to see their brush settings, and some artists are not comfortable with that because they've put in the effort to find the settings and work hard on making that perfect brush, and whatever their reasons are, they shouldn't have to share their brush settings if they don't want to. A person or anybody can just figure out the settings because it's not that complex. I know Clip Studio Paint is a little bit different when it comes to brush settings because there is a lot more in-depth compared to Paint Tool Sai. Where Paint Tool Sai is a little bit easier. I know some people make custom brushes, and those will be a lot harder to replicate. And it takes a lot of time to try to replicate brushes. But learning and experimenting with brushes makes it all worthwhile, or you can just go online and find brush settings already pre-made and ready for you to purchase. Also, I want to point out that it is not my Gaia avatar, and I don't want to say the username because I'm afraid of mispronouncing it, but I'll write down the owner of the who made the avatar, and I'll put it on the description. Okay, so now that the majority of the drawing is filled out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little gradient. So what I'll add is either the watercolor or the airbrush tool, and scrolling down over here, I'll click another layer, and this is the horns, by the way. So I'll click an empty layer, and I'll clip it to the layer below, and I'll start just kind of coloring it in just a little bit. Now, if I don't like the color that's coming out, what I do is I go to edit, I do a brightness or contrast or hue and saturations, luminosity. Maybe mostly just hue, and just change the hue of it to I'm going to raise the saturation just a little bit more. Perfect. And I don't want to overbrush them, so that's something new I've learned, is over shading. I'm still learning how to color. Now, when it comes to picking a darker color for a flat color, and you don't have maybe if you're taking it from a flat reference and it doesn't have that much shading, if you're not sure how to pick it, I usually just go by diagonal, and then I use the color wheel above it, and I just go for like a different color. Keep in mind, I'm still experimenting with color, and it's something that I'm learning every day. Every time I color, I learn something new. And by the way, if I'm not a big fan of it, again, I go back to the edit and I just change the hue or saturation, brightness, anywhere until I get a satisfying color to work with. Okay, what I'm going to do next, and you can do this by yourself, by itself, without having to, you know, what I did is just use gradient and just fill it in like that. What you can also do is create a new layer above the folder, put that layer below, go for overlay, go with black, and you see how it made the colors a lot darker. I usually just do this for shadows. Now, I know this looks a lot darker, so what you do is just lower the opacity a little bit, and it still gives off a nice shadowy color. You don't have to worry about picking darker colors. You just go with an overlay and just use that as for shadows. Here is the one setting that sets itself differently from Paint Tool SI, and it's the glow settings. I have this weird feeling that SI and the glow settings for paint, Clip Studio Paint are very, very different, and I kind of miss using Paint Tool SI for this reason, and it's the luminosity. I just love coloring with luminosity, but I've switched with Clip Studio Paint because there was a moment where I was scared that one day Paint Tool SI, as popular as it is, one of these days is not going to keep up with the newer operating system. Like, I had to change the settings for Paint Tool SI to work when I was forced to go to Windows 10. And I actually had to revert back to the older settings. At the time, Windows 10 was like very iffy and it was crappy. And so I had to revert Paint Tool SI to a settings for me to use it. And I was scared that one of these days it's just not going to work anymore. And so I bought Clip Studio Paint at a discount. It was 20 bucks. It was on sale. And sometimes they would have it on sales after a while. And so, oh, oops, change it up. Oh, add glow by accident. I switched to Clip Studio Paint just in case, but I haven't gone back ever since, because it seems a little bit better. It's just the glow settings feels a lot different. I still prefer the luminosity in Paint Tool SI over this, and I'll show the difference in the future in later videos if possible. But the next step is I created a new layer above overlay, and I go with glow, add glow. That's the luminosity settings on Paint Tool SI. And what I do is I just color it in on the edges. And then I lower the opacity. I do. Makes the drawing shiny. And voila! That's it. That's all the coloring process. I know what I did is a lot of layers, and for some people it might not work because having a lot of layers can slow down your computer. But That was only an issue for me if I were using Photoshop and it had a crap ton of layer. But so far I haven't had much of an issue with Clip Studio Paint. I do put in an effort to decrease the amount of layers as possible. But if my computer can handle it, then I just make as many layers as possible. If not, I'll just merge them together. No issue. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more of this stuff, then just subscribe to my channel. And I promise that I will make a little more videos in the future. I was going to make a terms of service video, but it required a lot more planning. I bit more than I can chew. And I'm planning on getting a better microphone instead of using the one from my laptop. So hopefully I improve a little bit on these videos. So thank you so much for your patience, and I want you to have an awesome day.